Alright boys, today's the day we get to a tier list I've been wanting to do for a while. The Roblox Adventure, RPG, whatever you want to call it, tier list. I've gathered a bunch of Roblox games, adventure games specifically, and this time I'm going to be ranking them in order, which is something I really haven't done at all actually, from worst to best basically. So without further ado, let's get this video rolling. First, let's just get F tier out of the way. These are just games that I just wanted to put in F tier because I don't know. There's literally like nothing, actually. But, I don't know. Let's just get this out of the way. So we got Hero Havoc, Dungeon Quest, Character Chaos, and Legend of the Colossus. Now, first thing I want to get out of the way is Legend of the Colossus actually has a remake called like Legends Rewritten, and that's just some anime game, but I could save that for an anime tier list if I ever wanted to do one. But other than that, the rest of them are just on the tier list because simply they just don't really compare to the other ones on the list, and I just really have no idea where I want to put them, so I just decided to put them here. Yeah. Alright, so moving on to C tier. I did not put any in D tier, so let's just move on to the first game, which is Dungeon Delver. I think that's how you pronounce that. So, it's one of the many roguelike games on this list. And this one's actually pretty old, being originally made in like 2013, I'd say. And I think the version I'm reviewing is continued under new ownership, like getting updated and whatever. But it's your pretty standard roguelike game with different weapons, randomized stats, and some customization. And it's pretty cool, but as old as it is, it holds up okay compared to the others, but I decided to put it at the bottom of C tier. So let's just move on. Now, this is an interesting case for a game. We have Hexaria. It's a 3D grid game, which as far as I know, it's the only one that's on Roblox. It's a pretty cool concept, being pretty unique for a Roblox game. However, the game is a little boring. I mean, some of the cards and the animations look kind of cool, but at the end of the day, some of them are just kind of repetitive in their game style and play, so I don't know. Next, we got World Zero. Now, this may come as a surprise for some people because the game actually looks graphically really cool, but to me, it's not that good. The gameplay just really comes down to auto-clicking and spamming your moves, literally just standing still with little to no effort put into it. However, the game does shine because the stages are actually pretty interesting. Along with the whole unique anime character aesthetic, it's pretty cool, but still C tier for me. Alright, next on the list is Dungeon Slayer. Now, this is another roguelike dungeon game we got in our hands, which it will not be the last because there are a lot of these on the list actually. This one's actually pretty cool though. It's got a variety of quests, classes, minigames, and accessories to buy. However, as far as gameplay goes, the enemies vary with ranged and close attacks, and it's pretty cool, but the dungeon does get like more chaotic the higher the stages go up, bombarding rooms with crazy amounts of enemies, which is kind of annoying in my opinion, but other than that, it's a okay game. This is a Rogue Lineage copy.
Full Metal Alchemist! Full Metal Alchemist.
Alright, and now our first game for B tier is Dungeon Shooter. Dungeon Shooter is a retro style game with a pretty unique layout actually. You travel dungeon to dungeon following a massive map, where after each major boss, the terrain changes. Speaking of the enemies however, the NPC designs are one of the big highlights to me of this game, making it more distinct than other games on Roblox. However, going back to gameplay, throughout the game you'll discover different upgrades in the form of fruits and vegetables, which alone sounds pretty weird. However, this game's unique style and crazy gameplay does make for a well-executed game. Ooh, this next one's really good. Cube Cavern. Now this is a classic. Made by Z Kevin a really long time ago. This is a one-of-a-kind dungeon Roblox game. The game has you traverse a plethora of different caverns to find different items, face against powerful bosses, and a unique crafting system actually. Crafting is actually a really big part of Cube Cavern because most, if not all, of the items that are necessary to be good in the game are used from crafting. I would also like to note that this game does have some flaws, such as the reuse of level designs and the changing of color palettes for bosses. However, for a game that was made in 2015, it still holds up pretty well, with a lot of fans re-uploading the original game and adding new items. This game is really important, and I want you guys to remember it because there's another game very similar to this that's on the list, and I'm going to talk about that very soon. Now, next on the list is Roguelike Prototype, a class-based dungeon game with randomized dungeons, and is pretty fun. You start by picking a class, which along the way, each wave you pass will unlock a set of upgrades. Once you use the stat points, you get a set of cards you can select from after the wave. This is where you can pick an ability or weapon upgrade. Each class has their own set of unique upgrades and skills and weapons that you can use to form your own build along the way. It's a very simple design compared to other games, but it holds up on this list pretty well against everything else. Alright, and now we have the predecessor to Cube Cavern, simply named Super Cube Cavern. Now when I heard this announcement, I was extremely excited to see what the game was like. I really liked Cube Cavern when I was growing up as a kid, and I was really excited to see it more up to date and revamped. I was not expected for what it would look like at all. The game got a complete revamp with the gameplay being really different. The main difference being that the game plays similarly to another game prior to Super Cube Cavern, that being Robot 64. The game is now 3D with the addition of brand new models for enemies, weapons, and characters. Staying true to Cube Cavern, however, it is a dungeon game where you go through each dungeon and fight a boss at the end. The game does in fact keep all the same weapons as the predecessor did, but it does add some new weapons into the mix as well. I think my biggest problem with the game right now is its dungeon generation. There are times where I'll just spawn in and find the exit right next to me and then immediately move on to the next dungeon, while other times I'll find myself wandering the entire stage looking every corner to find it. Which is why I believe the original has this game beat in that regard. At least the rooms were masterable and interesting to explore, so that now once you know them, you can just blitz through the stage. With the randomized caverns though, it does feel like a mess sometimes. Another thing I find strange is the combat of Super Cube Cavern, as it's pretty difficult to land hits without getting hit yourself. However, I must say that I enjoyed my time playing this. It takes a different approach to the original Cube Cavern, making it more cartoony in a way that's pretty neat. Alright, and now kicking off with A tier, we got Hours, which is a roguelike boss rush game where you go through waves of enemies. Well, let's just start off with the main mechanics on the game first. Once you load into the game, you'll have a selection of hosts. Each host has their own set of moves, playstyles, and set of abilities you can obtain. You then get to pick a special ability, which is where the game gets pretty interesting. You can stop time, skip time, travel back in time, clone yourself from another timeline, and a lot of time-related things. You basically just become a damn Stan at this point, but moving along. The game is actually really cool. A lot of enemies you encounter are pretty unique because you're going to encounter 2 enemies at a time. It's a clever way to mix up the gameplay. After defeating a stage, you get a selection of cards that will enhance ability in some way. Some are game-changing, while others are more simple. It's pretty rewarding when you find a card that works really well with not only your character, but also your special ability. Another big thing with Hours is the bosses. The bosses in the game are absolutely fantastic and are both difficult and very fun. Moving on, we have Tales from the Valley. Man, this is a good game. It had a lot of fun ideas and I actually really enjoyed this game. Alright, so Tales from the Valley is an adventure robot RPG style game based around player interaction more than anything. You could argue this is a faction game where guilds just fight each other, but I'm still putting it on the adventure tier list. Tales from the Valley has an interesting take on adventure games, having a very different aesthetic compared to newer adventure games, using a plastic brick template for every building and every map part of the game. Yet, the game is actually still really fun to explore. You basically get jobs as a delivery man and travel town to town delivering cash. Now, a simple concept as this creates a lot of gameplay options, not only in an exploration sense, but in a fighting sense as well. It's a good gameplay mechanic because it has you traverse the vast world searching for new towns and secrets in the map, but it also has you come across players who might want to steal your delivery and kill you on the spot. But going back to the map, however, the map is truly amazing. Aside from the massive villages, there's a lot to explore and discover, which brings me to another important mechanic in Tales from the Valley, the magic. Tales from the Valley uses a very unique casting system, having to do a correct combination to successfully cast a spell. While traveling around the map, you may come across symbols engraved into the walls of the world you live in. These symbols, once found, will be given to you in the form of a spell. By holding Z and dragging your mouse in a certain order, you are able to use one of your spells. The spells are mainly used as player buffs, enhancing speed, strength, jump, or lighting up a dark cave. I'm honestly kind of sad there aren't many spells that are obtainable in this game. I would like to see what other spells could be made and used with this system. The game also contains a lot of side mechanics, such as artifacts, scrolls, brands, purity, and corruption, which are all somewhat obtainable now. However, this game deserves a lot of respect as the predecessor to another game on this list. Now we have Arcane Reborn, a remake of an old game called Arcane Adventure. You travel the world discovering new islands and enemies to fight. You first create a character, then select a magic element. Each element has a similar move set, but with different variations depending on which one you picked. As you travel the world, you will encounter dungeons, bosses, and enemies you must battle. The game's quest system is pretty neat as well. The main storyline has you travel to each of the different islands, meeting the inhabitants and usually facing off against a boss or going through a dungeon. The game also has a sort of unique style, using Roblox packages and accessories as in-game wearables. However, there is a game higher on this list that is similar to this, which I'll be talking about very soon. Alright, and now we have Verdant Moon, a game clearly inspired by two other games on this list. However, Verdant Moon, to me, has some distinct features that make it pretty interesting. In Verdant Moon, you go around the world fighting players and NPCs. The game has the player use a variety of weapons, each with their own separate moves that you can learn. However, where this game takes a turn is what you can do alongside your weapon. There's not only a variety of spells you can discover, but also covenants, shrines, and an entirely purity and corruption system. To me, this game is a combination of mechanics from Tales from the Valley and Rogue Lineage, taking some of the best mechanics and not only putting a twist on them, but making it pretty enjoyable. However, some of these NPCs are complete bull. Now we have World of Magic, the predecessor to Arcane Adventure. This game has a lot to unpack and discover. The game's main selling point for me is the world aspect. Newspapers, global messages, factions, raids, and reputation all play a crucial role in your progression. You can pick to be a hero, fulfilling quests and defeating dark mages, or you can be a villain and slaughter entire villages and defeat players. This game is extremely personalized, and it's up to you to make your own build. You have a lot of customization when it comes to armor and weapons, but you also have a lot of customization when it comes down to spells. The spells are completely customizable, being able to choose how big your explosions are, how many blasts you shoot, and even your own specific spell name and animation. Ooh, now we have Adventure Story, and this one is a personal favorite of mine. Adventure Story is one of the few turn-based RPG games on Roblox, and I adore this game for a multitude of reasons. But first, let's get into the basics of the game. You follow a main storyline which has you face off against a variety of different bosses and enemies in the game. You will learn magic and discover different abilities along your journey in the form of magic cards. Each enemy you defeat has a chance of dropping an item, whether it's an accessory that you can use to customize your avatar, or a magic card, which you can then use to upgrade and learn a move from that enemy. I should also talk about the game's aesthetic, a very bright and colorful world with simplistic NPC designs. The world also inspires you to scavenge the land searching for chests and coins, which give items that can be used in battle. Which, speaking of the battle, turn-based combat might be one of my favorite combat styles on this list. For the most part, it is your standard RPG where you get mana, which allows you to use one of your special abilities. However, where it gets interesting is how you do it. When using an ability, there is a short time frame for when you can click your mouse and land a critical attack, increasing the damage of that ability. It may seem like a simple mechanic, but it's one of the ways that keeps the player engaged in the battle. Another way this is done is by blocking and dodging your opponent's attacks. While your opponent is attacking, you can either click the space bar and dodge the attack by jumping up, or by clicking the mouse button to block it. For a turn-based RPG, this was enough to keep me engaged. Along with the vast amount of spells you can learn and discover in the game, this has to be one of my favorites on this list. Alright, and now we have a controversial one, Rogue Lineage. Arguably one of the most well-known games on Roblox to players and developers alike. I honestly would like to make my own separate video on this game alone, but let's move back to the tier list. Rogue Lineage is a very difficult adventure game. The game starts you off with literally nothing, leaving you to figure out everything on your own. At least, that's how it was when the game came out. Each class in Rogue Lineage is based off the weapon you choose. Your progression is spent mostly gaining XP and collecting money in order to buy your skills. There are 3 stages in your class progression: base class, super class, and ultra class. There are uber classes, but that's another conversation entirely. Anyway, the classes are separated by orderly and chaotic, which is where a difficult part comes into play, the PvP. The way you earn chaotic and orderly is specifically linked to players. However, that does bring me to Rogue Lineage's biggest problem, its progression. The progression of this game is literally designed to take time and be difficult. One of the main mechanics, mana, you first have to unlock it by getting hit by a cursed spell by another player. Then you have to wait an entire hour on your character to use it. Then you have to train your mana so you can climb, run, and charge it faster. However, even with a long progression and some other flaws, the game still stands out as one of the most memorable Roblox experiences out there. Alright, next on the list is Lore Game, a game I've made a lot of videos on actually. Lore Game is one of the more unique games on the list, taking place in a massive dark cavern with nothing but an empty void. You'll spend most of your time exploring the dark cavern, searching for armor, weapons, skins, and runes, which all benefit your character in some different way. The game is actually a lot about personalization and creating your own outfit and just weapon style. However, there are also a lot of exploration aspects of the game as well. Many weapons and abilities require you to do a special quest in order to unlock them. The quests in Lore Game range from really funny to just straight up obnoxious at times. One of the quests you can do is travel around helping this builder guy as you watch him brutally punch nails into everything he sees. Or you can have a quest where you have to search every nook and cranny to find the NPC you're looking for. Which brings me to the map actually. The map of Lore Game is pretty unique, taking place in a dark underground cavern. There are towns, camps, churches, a lot of planks, and some very secret areas to find. To be honest, the cave theme sort of gets old, but recently with the new area they've added, it brings me to my attention that there's more to this cave than it seems. But this also has another thing that brings to my eye, which is the combat. Lore Game's combat is pretty simplistic, with you having 3 swings, a heavy attack, a parry, and 2 weapon moves you can use at a time. The PvP basically revolves around you just parrying and trying to extend your combos onto each other, or just hitting somebody off the cliff. You can guess how I like to play the game. Each weapon has a set of skills you can learn in the form of runes. The runes take a shape of a dark eye and they're hidden across the map. Now, this is a section where I gotta praise this game's recent update, because for a long time this game was a small community game, only getting around 20 to 30 players, at least when I started playing it. And over the course of this game's history, it's gained a massive following, averaging a rough 300 players at times. And this update shows how far it's come. I mean, compare the first boss of the game and the latest one. Like, The creator of this game has gone through great lengths, and I gotta commend him on it. And that's why this lore game gets a spot in A tier. So let's move on. Alright, and at the top of A tier, we have Voxel Blade. At Voxel Blade core, it's an adventure game that tries to combine a lot of roguelike elements into it. In Voxel Blade, you travel a massive world slaying monsters, finding armor, spells, and leveling up your weapon. The main part of leveling up is the evolution of your sword. Every few levels, you can pick a weapon path to follow. You basically make a build based around the weapon and fight players, monsters, and explore the vast map. First, I'd like to talk about the map for a little bit. The world itself is actually pretty interesting. It can go from being very joyful to just straight creepy. The landscape you explore can be pretty boring, however, I do have to give it credit when it comes to having one of the best game areas in like all of the RPGs I've covered, the Icy Plateau. I'll go into more detail about that area, but first let's begin with the basics. Starting off the game, you start with a base sword, and you get quests from NPCs to go kill monsters. The monsters are pretty cut and dry, with them usually having one or two different attacks that you can dodge or block. Each NPC and area you come across has a set of armor, either acquired from a shop or a monster drop. The armors themselves can vary in stats, similar to Terraria where you get randomized stat benefits on each armor set. Then there are the weapons themselves. A large branch of weapons you can follow to build your character. Each weapon has a special attack unique to itself. You can also obtain a variety of spells in the form of magic cards dropped by enemies. I would like to say that the thing I'm kind of iffy on in this game is the guilds. I feel like what the game was going for with guilds and stuff was a little too much, as it started to drift away from a player creating their own build to just getting a guild, the guild armor, and then bam, your character. Another problem I find with it is the swords you get per level. It's a cool and unique feature, but it can just get boring to stick with one weapon. And if you want to get another one, you have to just erase your character and start over again. To be honest, I feel this game would do better as if it had actual weapons you could earn from enemies and be able to switch between them, instead of just getting one weapon for the rest of your progression. To me, however, Voxel Blade as it is, it tries to mix and combine roguelike mechanics into an adventure game. Some of these ideas work, which is why I believe one of the best parts of Voxel Blade is in fact the Icy Plateau. Throughout Voxel Blade's map, most areas are extremely big with little differences in the terrain, and just copy and pasted props and such. However, the Icy Plateau in my eyes is almost like a race. You first get a quest after tracking it, you learn the markers far up in mountain. The minute you enter the Icy Plateau, the music hits into it and changes into its theme. You notice how low your health bar gets as it starts slowly depleting from the snow, and you realize you have nowhere to go but forward. As you make your way through, you travel and you come across the far scariest creature in the game, a winter wolf. They are specifically designed to deal a lot of damage and have you low HP. They appear almost at nowhere sometimes, usually getting the jump on the player and taking a chunk out of their health bar. However, after climbing the vast snowy biome, you finally make a mad dash and come across the northern village. To me, this area is brilliant for a variety of reasons. The way your health bar slowly goes down gives the player a time limit and a sense of urgency to get to their destination, along with the maze-like structure of the Icy Plateau and threat of winter woofs around any corner makes for one of my favorite Roblox biomes ever. I will say though, a very big reason to why this game is so high up on this list is because it's being worked on again and remade. Now this game alone by itself in whatever version of the game, like the old version you want to call it right now as it stands, is amazing. This game has so much and it's very fun. But the remake, I'm so excited for the remake. The remake looks fantastic from the leaks and all the designs and models we've seen. It looks fantastic and I can't wait for it to come out. So I'm very excited for that to come out. But without further ado, let's move on to S tier, shall we? Alright, and now we're on to S tier. Now our first game in S tier is Countless Worlds. Now, I'm not going to go too in-depth into Countless Worlds because I've already done that on the stress test. I'm just going to be going over what's changed and why I think this game has a lot of potential actually. Starting off, the game graphically has gone up a lot, changing the inventory, the smoother animation, and just overall presence of the game has completely changed. The original Countless Worlds seemed to be just a build off of Critical Adventure, but now the game looks fully developed and branched away from those style of games. Of course, the combat itself has stayed relatively similar. Jump into the icons in order to deal damage, each weapon having a special trait. However, something I noticed was the addition of a special ability. Not only do you get a special trait, like an example being the bounce class, the more you stay in the air bouncing off of icons, the more you can deal damage into a combo. You now get a special Q ability though, which allows you to get an extra jump in mid-air. The other weapons also get this special trait in the form of an evasive move or an attack ability. They've also added a new style, that being Shield. Shield now, just instead of being a branch off of the bounce class, it's its own unique thing. They've also made a lot of quality of life changes as well, adding different variants to enemies you can encounter. When encountering an enemy, you have a chance to come across an enchanted enemy. These enchanted enemies have a chance to drop a special enchanted item. And there's an even rare variant called Gilded Enemies, which are basically the shiny Pokemon of the game. There are a lot of things to unpack with this game, but I'm going to save it for its own individual video when the game comes out, which should be relatively soon actually. Alright, and next on the list we have Lumion Legacy. Now this game has some history on Roblox, originally being Pokemon Brick Bronze, a fan game where you went up against Team Eclipse, now being rebranded as Lumion Legacy. And I'm not gonna lie, this game is absolutely amazing. The game is your standard Pokemon style game, but in my opinion is different enough to be its own thing. The game follows a pretty hefty storyline, which I won't be going into a lot of detail about because I'd like to save that for another video. But I would like to say that this game is brilliant. From the designs of each Lumion to the mini games you can do, if there's one thing this game is good at, it's giving the players something to do. Discovering Lumions, Shinies, Legendaries, Mastery, and Holiday events are all common things in Lumion. The game is flooded with quests and exploration for the player to find. Now let's talk about the combat a little bit. The combat is your typical turn-based RPG style combat with your Lumions. You get 5 Lumions to use in your party, and in typical Pokemon standard, each Lumion has a certain type, with its own benefits and weaknesses. When fighting, the game will indicate which moves are powerful and not powerful against the enemy you are facing. But the main reason I put this game so high for me is because there's so much to do and discover. Not only is there a very wide cast of Lumions for you to find, but they all have different traits, moves, evolutions, and that isn't even counting the rallying in the Battle Coliseum. The grind is insane for this game. And as this game stands, it stands to be one of the best adventure games out there on Roblox. Alright, and now we have Fantastic Frontier. Man, this takes me back. Alright, Fantastic Frontier is a Roblox adventure game which has you discover new armor, weapons, and new enemies to face off against. The world at a glance may seem pretty boring and generic due to the Roblox terrain generation being used. However, the map's buildings make up for that, and the towns and areas you will discover look absolutely amazing. The style is very unique, and how things are built, it just makes it all very creative in my eyes. Now, I could talk about a lot of things in this game, like I have with the others, but I'm afraid that this video would get way too long if I were to go into too much detail, and I'll just save it for its own video where I might do a Fantastic Frontier in a nutshell video, which would be pretty interesting. But anyway, in Fantastic Frontier, you come across a variety of different looking enemies. Each enemy has different attack patterns and designs. Now, at its core, you can cheese most of these enemies and bosses by backing away and whatnot, but it doesn't take away from the fact that the game's unique design and aesthetic combined with its strange and wacky world are absolutely amazing to explore. Another big reason to why this game is so high up on this list is that it's not only just a fun game at itself, but it's also getting a major update which has been in the works for a very long time. So I can't wait to see what it looks like next. Alright, and last on our list is Deepwoken. Now I'm pretty sure most of you saw this coming, but this is by far the best Roblox adventure game, no matter how you look at it. Nothing compares to this game, and it quite literally towers over most of the competition. It manages to perfectly balance out a PvP system and a PvP system so that it works pretty well looking both ways. If you want to watch me go into more detail about this game, I've already made a massive video on this game, which I would love if it got more views, so yeah. And that's it. Hey, thank you very much for making it to the end of this video if you did. Sorry if I sounded a little weird going through the last few. I've gotten pretty sick and my voice does sound pretty weird, and I'm pretty sure most of you will notice that. But sorry. But thank you very much for making it to the end of this video. There are a lot of things I wanted to talk about. Mainly a lot of these games individually I wanted to go over, like Voxel Blade and Fantastic Frontier are only few of the examples I wanted to go in depth about, but for the sake of keeping this video at least a little bit shorter than what it would have originally been, let's just keep it at this for now. I would really like in the future though to make maybe a Fantastic Frontier in a nutshell, or maybe a Voxel Blade in a nutshell, and just give my opinion on games like those. Or just let me know what kind of content you guys like me to make. If it's tier list, reviews, or just straight up stupid gameplay videos. I love reading the comments, and thank you so much for watching my YouTube channel. Thank you very much.